specifically quite a bit of time with Netflix. So I interviewed over 200 employees at Netflix. I spent a lot of time with their CEO, and then their CEO, Reed Hastings is his name. And then I wrote a book with Reed about our findings, right? So that was kind of the journey. So I wanted to talk with you today about some of the primary lessons that I had as I was going through that process. And I think I'll start by saying that Netflix is quite an interesting company to study for some different reasons. I think we can say, okay, obviously Netflix has been incredibly innovative, but there's lots of incredibly innovative companies. What's more unique about Netflix is that they've done something that's incredibly rare, which is that they've managed to reinvent themselves a number of times in a short number of years. So those of you who are in the US, you remember that it was not very long ago that Netflix was a DVD by mail company. You remember, right? They had these warehouses around the world and around the US, and they were putting these DVDs into red envelopes, putting the red envelopes into the mail, right, and sending them by post to their clients. And then, of course, the environment shifted and Netflix shifted with it. So Netflix then became a high-tech company, streaming rerun television shows and old movies to their clients around the country. And then the environment shifted and Netflix shifted with it. This time, they opened up a studio in LA. They hired actors and directors, and they reinvented themselves as their own media company, now competing with companies like Disney, right? And they did this in just a handful of years. So something quite remarkable that almost no company has managed to do. What was interesting to me was that Reed, their CEO, felt that the success of the companies, the innovation and the flexibility was linked largely to the organizational culture at the company. Okay, so that's what made it very interesting to me. Now, I would like to say before we start that the culture that they have at Netflix is highly unusual. Some of you are going to love the things we're going to talk about, and some of you are going to hate them. Right? But that being said, as I was going through this process, I saw that whether you love it or hate it, there really were a number of very interesting lessons that I think any company or any manager or leader can learn from. Okay, so I want to just explore some of those with you today. And I'll start by just kind of covering two of them. So the first one, I think my overall learning from this work, from this research project, was to recognize that it seems that I see now that a large majority of the companies today are still operating with what I will call an industrial era hangover. And what I mean by that is that we are still all obsessed with error prevention and replicability and consistency. All those things that we learned during the industrial era would lead to success, right? And if you are leading a manufacturing company today, or if you are working in a safety critical environment, then I imagine that error elimination and consistency are still your primary goals. But of course, in a growing number of organizations and on a growing number of teams, having some error is no longer the primary risk. The primary risk is not innovating fast enough or thinking creatively enough, and therefore becoming irrelevant, right? So if your company or part of your company falls into that second category of innovation being more important than error elimination, then these are really lessons that I think are extra important maybe for your company to think about. Okay, so that was my kind of first overall learning, and that's sort of my general introduction. And I want to start jumping in now, and I want to begin by saying that beyond that, I imagine that many of you have started or maybe have fully formed corporate cultures that you talk about in your organizations. And the second primary learning, and I really wanted to spend some time on this, that I had going through this work was that, oh, actually, okay, link to this. Okay, so let me pull this up. Now, some of you, I believe, have been aware of Netflix culture for quite a while. And you may have become aware of it many years ago when they released this slide deck onto the internet. And the slide deck started, this is the Netflix culture deck, which has been downloaded now over 20 million times, and which Sheryl Sandberg said was the most important document to ever come out of Silicon Valley. Okay, so if you are one of those people who have read this document, it starts like this. Many companies have nice sounding value statements displayed in the lobby, such as integrity, communication, respect, and excellence. Right. Sound familiar to some, I imagine. Enron, for example, had these specific value systems that were displayed in their lobby, and their leaders went to jail, and it went bankrupt from fraud. Right. Okay, so that leads me to the first topic that I wanted to explore with you, which is that I recognized during this work that the companies that were managing to articulate a corporate culture, and then that articulation would actually take root and impact the employees' behavior, that they were less likely to be focusing on these absolute positive words like integrity. I mean, what would be the good option to integrity? Right? Okay, the opposite of integrity is corruption, and no company would say they value that, right? What I saw instead was that these companies who were managing to articulate a culture that took root in the company were focusing instead on looking at the tough dilemmas or the difficult tensions that their managers were facing on a daily basis. And they were saying, when you come across this kind of dilemma, and you could go right, which would lead to one good, or left, which would lead to another good, in those situations, turn left. Right? I want to give you a couple of examples in order to get you thinking about this, and we're going to use the chat box and you're going to vote. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of examples of the kinds of dilemmas that you might think about, and I'll give you A and B options, and we can get a vote from everybody as to what you would do in this situation. Okay, all right. So the first dilemma starts like this. The first dilemma is that you are leading a team of 8 marketing specialists. Okay, so you are a marketing manager. And one day, one of the women on your team, her name is Sheila. Sheila comes to you and she is very excited. She comes to you and she says, "Boss, I have a great idea for how to move the company forward," right? And she tells you her idea. She says, "I know it's going to be expensive. I know it's going to take a lot of resources and it's going to take my time, but I really believe that this will lead to, good things for the team and the organization." Now, you love Sheila's enthusiasm. You do. The problem is that you really don't think that this idea is going to be successful. You think it's going to fail. So you say to her, "Sheila, thank you so much for your passion, but I have some concerns." You tell her what your concerns are, and you say, "You know what? Why don't you go home and think about it some more? I'll go home and think about it too. Let's talk to other people and let's meet again next week," right? So the next week, Sheila comes back into your office again, and she is just as excited as she was the week before. "Boss, I've been thinking about it all week long, and I still really am excited about this idea. I thought about your concerns, and I have some ideas for how to mitigate the risk, she tells you, right? But the more she talks, the more you think, oh, yeah, I see she really believes in it, but you still, maybe even more so, you really don't think this is going to be successful, right? You think it's going to fail. So my question for you, dear boss, is are you going to let Sheila invest the money and resources in this project? Okay, so here are your options. You have option A or B. Let's take a vote from everybody. So A, no, I'm not going to let her put that money in it. You know, why would I throw away time and money into a project I don't think is going to be successful, right? Or B, yeah, I'm going to do it. I see she really believes in it. You know, I want to get innovation going. So yeah, go for it, Sheila. Okay, now as I'm looking at the boxes here, of course, I'm seeing something very interesting, which is I am seeing that we have a dilemma. I'm seeing we have a dilemma. So it was actually quite interesting. We had a lot of A's at the beginning, right? And then we had kind of A, B's, and then we have a big string of B's at the end. And we have Majed who weighed in with a C, it depends. Okay, no, Majed, there's no it depends. I always have some of those. Okay, now I want to call on one of you who chose an A and one of you who chose a B to defend your position. Valdemir. Now, the only point that I wanted to make here is we have such a dilemma. Look, all of these smart people on the line, you all heard the exact same thing. Yet, as you heard the situation, you had totally different ideas. Some said yes, some said no. This is a dilemma. Okay, now actually we heard very nicely between Priyanka and Valdemir a moment ago what this is a dilemma between. It's still a dilemma between developing an organizational culture that focuses on innovation versus on developing a corporate culture that focuses on error prevention. Now, either of these are, very valid cultures to develop, but you can't really say you do both at the same time. Right? Because these two things are in tension with one another, meaning we all know that innovation requires trying out a lot of little things, having a lot of little failures until eventually we get to that large success, right? So I just wanted to get you to start thinking now that if you say your goal is to have a culture of innovation, yet your managers behave in a way that shows they believe their focus is to stamp out errors, then you have an inconsistency, right, between what people say and what people do, and employees learn quickly, okay, what they say the corporate culture is not actually how we are behaving. Okay, whichever way you choose. All right. Okay, so we're going to come back to that a little bit later. And Netflix goes heavy to the left, but we'll talk about that later. That's not the point now. Okay, let's do one more dilemma. All right. Okay, so now this one was in your pre-reading, so I hope it doesn't influence you too much. All right. Okay, so here's the situation. The situation is that you are still leading a marketing team of 8 marketing specialists, right? And one day, and you have a very good team. You have good employees on that team. You have good collaboration. Actually, things are great. The only issue is that you are in discussions with your own boss about a possible organizational restructuring. Now, if this restructuring takes place, it will have a big impact on the employees in your team. Some people will be moved to other departments. People will get new bosses. Some people might even lose their jobs. So this would be like a big stress for some people, right? Now, you don't know if this is going to happen or not. If it happens, it will happen in about 4 months. And it's about, let's say, 60% likely to happen. Right? So my question to you is, you have this information now. Are you going to share this information with your staff, with your team? Are you going to tell them that you're in these discussions? Okay. And you can vote A or B. So A is no, I'm not going to tell them now, right? Because I feel like if I tell them, they're likely to start panicking. People will get upset. I don't even know if it's going to happen, right? So no, I'm just going to stay quiet for now, right? And then others of you may say B. Well, yeah, I'm going to tell them because I want them to see that I'm always very open with them. Okay, so let me just see. I see we've got, again, a big dilemma here. Corey, you said A, you would wait. Would you just like to quickly jump in and tell us why you said that?
We get from managers a lot.
Thank you very much, Corey and Marwan. Okay, now you guys know from your pre-reading that here, of course, is a dilemma, and this is a real dilemma. I mean, I look over here at your chat messages. We had a few more B's, but I think it was like a lot of A's over here too. I mean, this is really a dilemma. The dilemma is between transparency, which we just heard a good argument from Marwan about, and workplace stability, which Corey argued for very well, right? Either of these are fine. Either of these make a lot of sense. I mean, you have lunch with one of these guys, you'll end up feeling like they have the right answer, right? But the issue is that if you have chosen transparency as one of your core organizational values, and then your managers don't tell their teams what's going on, then you have an inconsistency between the behaviors of the employees or the behaviors of your management team and what you say your values are, right? So either of these, they're fine, they're in tension with one another, right? Two goods, right? But when we're thinking about corporate culture, we want to make sure that whatever we are articulating, we are actually then playing out as a management team. We are actually acting on what we say we value, right? Okay, so I just wanted to begin with this idea. I just wanted to begin with getting you to think a little bit about, what work you've done around organizational culture in your own organization, and to encourage you to avoid too much talk about absolute positives. And what I mean by that is there is no good option to respect. There's not. I mean, no one would say that they value disrespect. Right? So when you say that your organization values respect, I mean, that's nice. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that it doesn't help your employees wrestle with the real dilemmas that they are having on the ground. And if you instead can, as a leader, figure out what are the key dilemmas that you need to have in play, you need to focus on when identifying your corporate culture, and tell your employees, okay, with these three dilemmas, right, always go right. Then you'll start seeing that what you've articulated really takes root in the organization and impacts your workforce's behavior. Okay, so that was my first point.